The grand auditorium of the Crystal Moon Palace glittered like a frozen dream. Elara Winters stood at the entrance, her worn cotton dress a stark contrast to the silk and jewels adorning every other wolf in attendance. She shouldn't be here. Omegas like her didn't attend the royal mating ceremony. They watched from the outer courtyards on projection screens, if they were lucky enough to get the day off from their labor assignments. But her best friend Maya had begged her to come, insisting she'd gotten 2 tickets from a cousin who worked in the palace kitchens. Maya was somewhere in this sea of elegant strangers, probably already seated, leaving Elara to navigate alone. The ceremonial hall stretched before her like a cathedral, with vaulted ceilings painted with scenes of the moon goddess blessing the first werewolves. Chandeliers dripping with crystals cast rainbow prisms across marble floors so polished Elara could see her reflection. Hundreds of wolves filled the cushioned seats, alphas in their formal blacks and grays, betas in deep blues and greens, even other omegas dressed far better than she could ever afford. Elara clutched her small purse and tried to make herself invisible as she searched for Maya's dark curls. The ceremony would begin in minutes, and an usher was already giving her suspicious looks. "Miss, do you have your seating assignment?" The usher, a stern beta woman with silver streaking her temples, appeared at Elara's elbow. Yes, somewhere." Elara fumbled with her purse, knowing full well Maya hadn't given her any assignment card. They'd planned to slip into general seating at the back. "The ceremony begins shortly. If you don't have proper documentation. There's an empty seat here." A deep, rough voice cut through the tension. Both Elara and the usher turned. A tall man with dark hair sat alone in the 3rd row, far too close to the front for someone like Elara. He didn't look at them, his gaze fixed straight ahead, but he gestured to the empty seat beside him. The usher's eyes widened slightly. "Sir, that section is reserved for." "I don't see a name card." His tone was flat, brooking no argument. "The seat is empty. She can sit." The usher's mouth pressed into a thin line, but she nodded curtly and walked away. Elara stood frozen, uncertain whether to thank the stranger or flee to the back rows where she belonged. "You should sit before she changes her mind." The man still didn't look at her. Elara swallowed hard and slipped into the row, settling into the plush seat beside him. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't want to cause you any trouble. If this seat is supposed to be for someone important, it's empty. That's all that matters." Up close, Elara could see he was devastatingly handsome in a harsh, angular way. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and dark hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it too many times. He wore all black, expensive fabric that probably cost more than Elara made in a year. Power radiated from him like heat from a flame, making her wolf whimper and lower its head instinctively. He had to be an alpha. A powerful one. But he sat strangely still, his hands clenched on his thighs, his shoulders rigid. He stared at the stage where the ceremony would soon begin as if he could will himself anywhere else. "I'm Elara," she offered quietly, trying to be polite to the stranger who'd saved her from humiliation. He said nothing. Didn't even acknowledge he'd heard her. Elara bit her lip and faced forward, cheeks burning. Of course he didn't want to talk to her. She was an omega in borrowed ceremony clothes, sitting where she didn't belong. The sooner this ceremony ended, the sooner she could find Maya and leave. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd as the royal orchestra began to play, a haunting melody that made Elara's wolf stir restlessly. She'd never heard it before, but something in the ancient tune called to her blood. The high priestess emerged onto the stage, her white robes flowing, her face painted with silver symbols of the moon goddess. Behind her walked the eligible unmated wolves, 12 alphas, 15 betas, even a few omegas who'd been deemed worthy of consideration. They arranged themselves in a semicircle as the priestess raised her arms. "We gather under the blessing of the moon goddess," the priestess intoned, her voice magically amplified to reach every corner of the hall. "To witness the sacred bonds of fate. To honor the mates she has destined for each of her children." Elara had heard stories of the mating ceremony her whole life. Once a year, unmated wolves from across the kingdom gathered in the capital. The magic was strongest here, in the palace built on ancient ground where the goddess had first blessed their kind. Sometimes, fated mates found each other in the crowd. Sometimes, chosen mates pledged themselves publicly. Either way, it was a celebration of love and destiny. For everyone except Alara. She was only here to observe, to see the spectacle before returning to her small apartment and smaller life. This year, the priestess continued, we are honored by a sacred presence. Our Alpha King has agreed to seek his fated mate among us. The crowd erupted in excited whispers. Alara leaned forward, curiosity overriding her discomfort. The Alpha King rarely appeared in public, and he'd been unmated for years despite the council's pressure to produce heirs. Please rise for His Majesty, Alpha King Thorn Blackwood. The orchestra swelled. The crowd stood as one, Alara scrambling to her feet a beat behind everyone else. And the man beside her stood as well. Alara's breath caught as he stepped into the aisle. As he walked toward the stage with that same rigid posture, that same barely controlled tension. As every eye in the auditorium fixed on him with reverence and fear. No. No, it couldn't be. The man who'd let her sit beside him, who she'd introduced herself to like an idiot, was the Alpha King. Alara's face burned with mortification. She'd sat in the seat reserved for the king himself. She'd tried to make small talk with the most powerful wolf in the entire kingdom. And he'd said nothing, let her embarrass herself, probably thought her the most presumptuous Omega he'd ever encountered. On stage, Thorn Blackwood stood before the priestess, his expression carved from stone. He looked even more imposing under the lights, well over 6 feet tall, shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of the kingdom he ruled. But there was something in his dark eyes, something that looked almost like resignation. Your Majesty, the priestess said warmly. The goddess has blessed this ceremony with your presence. Do you open yourself to the sacred bond? Do you seek your fated mate among the gathered? A pause. For a heartbeat, Alara thought he might refuse. Then Thorn spoke, his voice carrying through the magical amplification. I do. The priestess smiled and raised her hands higher. Silver light began to emanate from her palms, ancient magic responding to her call. Then let the goddess reveal what is hidden. Let fate be known. The light spread through the auditorium like dawn breaking, washing over every wolf in attendance. Alara felt it brush against her skin, warm and electric, searching. Her wolf rose inside her, responding to the magic with an urgency she didn't understand. On stage, Thorn went absolutely still. His head turned slowly, his gaze sweeping the crowd as if pulled by an invisible thread. And then his eyes locked on Alara. Even from 30 feet away, she saw them flash brilliant gold. Saw his entire body go rigid. Saw his lips part on a sharp intake of breath. The mate bond slammed into place like a physical blow. Alara gasped, her hand flying to her chest as warmth exploded through her veins. It was everything the stories promised, recognition, completion, a sense of coming home. Her wolf surged forward, crying out for its mate, straining toward the Alpha King who stood frozen on stage. The auditorium fell silent. Every wolf in attendance could sense it, could feel the power of a true fated bond manifesting before their eyes. Thorn moved. He stalked down from the stage with predatory grace, his gaze never leaving Alara's face. The crowd parted for him automatically, wolves stepping over each other to clear his path. Alara couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't do anything but stare as the Alpha King approached her, his expression intense and unreadable. He stopped directly in front of her. This close, she could see the gold still swirling in his dark eyes, could feel the heat of his body, could smell his scent, pine and smoke and something wild that made her wolf howl with need. You, he said roughly. You're mine. Before Alara could respond, before she could process anything, Thorn reached out and cupped her face in his large hands. His thumbs brushed her cheekbones with surprising gentleness. And he kissed her. The crowd erupted. Cheers, gasps, applause, all of it faded into white noise as Alara's world narrowed to the feeling of Thorn's lips on hers, the mate bond singing between them, the impossible reality that she, a nobody Omega, was fated to the Alpha King. When Thorn pulled back, his eyes had returned to their normal dark color. He stared down at her for a long moment, his jaw tight. Then he released her and turned to face the crowd, keeping one hand on her lower back, a claiming gesture that sent shivers down her spine. "The goddess has chosen," he announced, his voice ringing with authority. "This woman is my fated mate. My Luna Queen." The applause grew deafening. The priestess was beaming, tears streaming down her face. Even the eligible wolves on stage were clapping, though some looked stunned. Elara stood in the center of it all, trembling, her lips still tingling from the king's kiss. She dared to look up at Thorn's profile, expecting to see joy or triumph or satisfaction, anything that matched the celebration around them. Instead, his face was a mask of pure anguish. His hand on her back was gentle, but his expression was that of a man facing execution. His jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. His eyes, when they flickered down to her for just a second, held something that looked devastatingly like guilt. And fear. The Alpha King was terrified. Not of her, but of something else. Something that finding his mate had triggered. As the crowd continued to cheer and the priestess declared them blessed by the goddess, a cold dread settled in Elara's stomach. She'd just been claimed by the most powerful alpha in the kingdom. So why did it feel like she'd just been sentenced to death? If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 2. The royal motorcade moved through the capital streets like a funeral procession despite the celebrating crowds. Elara sat alone in the back of the king's personal car, separated from Thorn by a glass partition and what felt like miles of frozen silence. Through the tinted windows, she could see wolves lining the streets, cheering and waving. News of the king's fated mate had spread through the city in minutes. Banners were already being hung, flowers thrown into the air. The kingdom was rejoicing. Inside the car, Elara felt like she was suffocating. Thorn sat rigid in the front passenger seat, his back to her, speaking in low tones to his driver. He hadn't looked at her since they'd left the ceremony hall. Hadn't spoken to her. The warmth of the mate bond still hummed beneath her skin, but it was tangled with something cold and sick that she didn't understand. Her phone buzzed in her purse. Maya, probably, demanding to know what the hell had just happened. Elara couldn't bring herself to look. How could she explain when she didn't understand it herself? The palace rose before them, a sprawling complex of white stone and silver spires that seemed to pierce the sky. Elara had only ever seen it from a distance, had never imagined she'd pass through its gates. Now those gates opened for her, and the car swept into a courtyard where dozens of staff members were already assembled, their faces a mixture of curiosity and barely concealed shock. An Omega. The king's mate was an Omega. The car stopped. A footman rushed to open Elara's door, offering his hand with practiced courtesy that couldn't quite hide his wide eyes. She stepped out on shaking legs, her worn dress suddenly feeling like rags among the palace's grandeur. Thorn was already striding toward the main entrance, his beta, a tall man with sandy hair and sharp gray eyes, hurrying to keep pace. He hadn't waited for her. Hadn't even checked to see if she was following. "Miss Winters?" A woman in an elegant gray suit approached, her smile professional. "I'm Helen, the palace coordinator. If you'll come with me, we'll get you settled." Settled. As if Elara was a new piece of furniture being delivered. She followed Helen through corridors that belonged in a museum, marble floors, painted ceilings, priceless artwork on every wall. Staff members stopped and bowed as she passed, their whispers following in her wake. "The king's chambers are in the east wing," Helen said as they climbed a grand staircase. "Your rooms have been prepared in the west wing." Elara's steps faltered. "Separate rooms?" Helen's professional smile didn't waver. "His Majesty thought you'd prefer privacy as you adjust to palace life. The west wing is quite comfortable. You'll have a suite with a sitting room, bedroom, and private bath." They were putting her as far from Thorn as physically possible while still keeping her in the same building. The suite was beautiful, all cream and gold, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the palace gardens. A four-poster bed dominated the bedroom, dressed in silk that probably cost more than everything Alara owned. Fresh flowers filled crystal vases. A wardrobe stood open, already stocked with clothes in her size. "How did you?" Alara gestured to the wardrobe. "We estimated. A seamstress will visit tomorrow for proper measurements." Helen moved toward the door. "Dinner will be sent up at 7. If you need anything, simply press the call button by the bed. Someone will attend you immediately." "Wait." Alara turned, her chest tight. "When will I see the king?" Helen's expression flickered, just for a moment, with something that looked like pity. "His Majesty has a very demanding schedule. I'm sure he'll send for you when time permits." She left before Alara could respond, the door clicking shut with a finality that echoed through the elegant suite. Alara stood alone in the center of the room, her wolf whining miserably. The mate Bond pulled at her, urging her to find Thorn, to be near him. But he'd made it clear he didn't want her anywhere close. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her mind reeling. This morning she'd been a nobody, worrying about making rent. Now she was supposedly destined to be Luna Queen, trapped in a palace with a mate who couldn't stand to look at her. The anguish on Thorn's face haunted her. That wasn't the expression of a man who'd found his fated mate. That was the expression of a man facing his worst nightmare. 3 days passed like a slow death. Alara saw Thorn exactly once, a glimpse of him crossing a courtyard far below her window, surrounded by advisors. He never looked up. The seamstress came and went, creating a wardrobe fit for a queen. Meals appeared on schedule, elaborate and mostly untouched. Helen checked in daily with updates about etiquette lessons and protocol training that would begin soon. No one mentioned the king. No one explained why he was avoiding his fated mate. Alara's wolf grew more restless with each passing hour. The mate Bond, incomplete and unacknowledged, had started to ache, a constant pressure in her chest that worsened whenever she thought about Thorn. She couldn't sleep properly. Food tasted like ashes. The beautiful suite felt like a gilded cage. On the 4th night, unable to bear another minute alone, Alara ventured out of her rooms. The palace was quieter after dark, only a few servants moving through the dimly lit halls. She didn't have a destination in mind, just needed to move, to do something other than stare at silk walls and wonder what she'd done wrong. She'd barely made it down 2 corridors when voices stopped her. Male voices, coming from a room with the door slightly ajar. One of them was Thorn's. She'd recognize that deep, rough timbre anywhere. Alara knew she shouldn't listen. But her feet carried her closer, her wolf desperate for any connection to their mate. "You can't keep avoiding her." The second voice was calmer, reasoning. "Marcus, the beta. The mate Bond won't allow it. You're both suffering. I'm protecting her, Marcus." Thorn's voice was raw with an emotion Alara couldn't name. "The farther she is from me, the safer she'll be." "Safe from what?" "Thorn, you're not making sense. She's your fated mate. The goddess herself chose. The goddess chose wrong." Something slammed, a fist on wood. "Or she has a cruel sense of humor. Either way, I won't let Alara pay for it." Silence. Then Marcus spoke again, quieter. "You can't reject her. The mate Bond will kill you both. You know this." "Then I'll die." Thorn's words were flat, final. "Better that than watch her." He cut himself off. Alara pressed closer to the door, her heart pounding so hard she thought they might hear it. "Then watch her what?" Marcus demanded. "Thorn, talk to me. What aren't you telling the council? What aren't you telling me?" "It doesn't matter. Just, make sure she's comfortable. Give her anything she wants. But keep her away from me." Footsteps approached the door. Alara stumbled backward, but not fast enough. The door swung open and Thorn stood there, his dark eyes meeting hers. For one heartbeat, the mate Bond flared between them, recognition, longing, desperate need. Alara saw his resolve waver, saw him lean toward her as if pulled by invisible strings. His hand actually lifted, reaching for her face. Then his expression shuddered like a door slamming closed. He stepped back, his hand dropping. Marcus. Escort Miss Winters back to her rooms. Not Luna Queen. Not even Alara. Just Miss Winters, like she was a stranger who'd wandered into the wrong wing. Thorn, Alara started, her voice breaking on his name. Your Majesty, he corrected coldly. You will address me as Your Majesty. The words hit like a slap. Alara felt her wolf recoil, whimpering. Marcus appeared beside Thorn, his expression tight with disapproval. Your Majesty, perhaps. That wasn't a request, Marcus. Take her back. Now. Thorn turned and walked away, disappearing down the corridor without looking back, his shoulders rigid. Marcus watched him go, his jaw working. Then he turned to Alara with genuine sympathy in his gray eyes. Come on. I'll walk you back. Why? The word came out broken. Why is he doing this? What did I do wrong? You did nothing wrong. Marcus's tone was gentle as he guided her back toward the West Wing. This isn't about you. Then what is it about? We're fated mates. The goddess chose us. We're supposed to. I know what you're supposed to be. But sometimes. Marcus sighed heavily. Sometimes there are complications. Things that make even the goddesses' will difficult to follow. What kind of complications could make a man reject his fated mate? Alara wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the palace's warmth. The mate bond ached in her chest, a hollow burning sensation that worsened with every step away from Thorn. Marcus hesitated, clearly torn between loyalty to his king and compassion for her suffering. It's not my story to tell. But I can tell you this, he's not doing this to hurt you. He's doing it because he thinks he's protecting you. Protecting me from what? I wish I could say. They'd reached her suite. Marcus opened the door for her, his expression troubled. Try to rest, Miss Winters. And, if you start feeling worse, call for someone immediately. Don't wait. The warning in his tone sent ice through her veins, but before she could ask what he meant, Marcus was gone. Alara stepped into her beautiful prison and locked the door behind her. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Alara was picking at breakfast when a knock sounded at her door. Before she could respond, it opened, and a woman glided in with the confidence of someone who owned every room she entered. She was stunning, tall and willowy, with pale blonde hair swept into an elegant twist and ice blue eyes that assessed Alara with the precision of a jeweler examining a questionable gem. Her dress was couture, her jewelry understated but clearly expensive. Everything about her screamed aristocracy and breeding. So you're the little Omega who's caused such a stir. The woman's voice was cultured, her smile sharp. I had to see for myself what all the fuss was about. Alara stood slowly, her wolf bristling. Who are you? Lady Seraphina Whitmore. I'm sure Thorn has mentioned me. When Alara's blank expression didn't change, Seraphina's smile widened. No? How interesting. I suppose he's been too busy avoiding you to explain the situation properly. Something about the way she said Thorn's name, familiar, possessive, made Alara's stomach clench. Explain what situation? That before the goddess so inconveniently chose you, Thorn and I had an understanding. Seraphina moved around the suite, trailing her fingers over furniture as if cataloging its worth. We were to be married at the end of this year. A political match, certainly, but a beneficial one for the kingdom. I would have made an excellent queen. Then why didn't the mate bond? Choose us? Seraphina laughed, a crystalline sound without warmth. Because fated mates aren't always convenient, darling. Sometimes they're inappropriate. Sometimes they're temporary obstacles that must be managed delicately. The threat in her tone was barely veiled. Alara lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated in her own rooms. The goddess chose us. That's not temporary. Isn't it? Seraphina turned, her blue eyes glittering. You're an Omega, Miss Winters. No offense, but you're hardly queen material. You don't know our customs, our politics, our world. You'll be eaten alive at court. And Thorne knows it. Each word landed like a carefully aimed dart. Because Serafina was right, Alara didn't belong here. Every servant's double take, every whispered conversation when she passed, confirmed it. If you're trying to scare me into leaving, I don't need to scare you. Serafina moved closer, her perfume expensive and cloying. I just need you to understand reality. Thorne is avoiding you because he's realized his mistake. The mate bond is inconvenient. But bonds can be broken with the right motivation. With the right pressure. You can't break a fated bond. Can't you? Serafina's smile was all teeth now. Keep telling yourself that while you waste away in this lovely suite, wondering why your mate won't even look at you. Meanwhile, I'll be in the council meetings, at the state dinners, by his side where I've always been. She moved toward the door, then paused. A piece of advice, Omega to you. Know when you're outmatched. Know when to cut your losses and disappear before things become unpleasant. Because they will become unpleasant if you insist on clinging to something that was never really yours. Serafina swept out, leaving the scent of her perfume and the poison of her words behind. Alara sank back into her chair, her hands shaking. She wanted to dismiss everything Serafina had said as jealous posturing. But the doubt had already taken root. Maybe Thorne regretted the bond. Maybe he wished the goddess had chosen someone like Serafina instead, someone elegant and educated, someone who belonged in his world. Maybe Alara was the mistake. The pain in her chest intensified, spreading through her limbs like ice. Her wolf whimpered, growing weaker by the hour. The bond's sickness was progressing faster than it should, fed by rejection and doubt. By evening, Alara couldn't get out of bed. By midnight, she couldn't stop shaking. The pain had become constant, her wolf barely present anymore, just a fading whisper of what it should be. She reached for the call button, but her arm wouldn't cooperate. The room spun, darkness creeping in at the edges of her vision. This was it. She was dying. The rejected mate bond was killing her, just like Marcus had warned. Alara thought of Thorne's face at the ceremony, that anguish, that fear. She understood now. He'd known this would happen. Known that claiming her would doom them both. Maybe he'd been right to avoid her. Maybe if she'd never sat in that seat, never caught his eye, they'd both be better off. The darkness swallowed her whole. Consciousness returned in fragments. Strong arms lifting her. The scent of pine and smoke overwhelming her senses. Her wolf surging weakly toward warmth and safety. Christ, Alara. Thorne's voice was rough with panic. Why didn't you call someone? She tried to answer but couldn't make her voice work. The pain had receded slightly now that he was near, the bonds singing with relief despite her body's weakness. She felt herself being carried swiftly through corridors, heard doors being kicked open, felt the change in temperature as they entered different rooms. Then she was being laid on a bed, different from hers, the sheets cool and smelling of him. Get the physician. Now. Thorne's command was sharp, directed at someone else in the room. Marcus, maybe. Then warmth surrounded her as Thorne lay down beside her, pulling her against his chest with desperate care. His arms wrapped around her, one hand cradling her head. Stay with me, he murmured against her hair. Just stay with me. Please. The mate bond flared bright and desperate between them. Alara's wolf whimpered and burrowed closer, drinking in his presence like a dying plant finally given water. Her body had been starving for this, for him, and now that she had it, she didn't want to let go. I'm sorry. Thorne's voice cracked. God, Alara, I'm so sorry. I thought keeping my distance would keep you safe. I thought if I could just resist long enough, maybe the bond would fade and you could have a normal life. But I'm killing you instead. I'm killing us both. His hand stroked her hair, his touch achingly gentle. I won't leave you again. Whatever happens, we face it together. I swear it. Elara wanted to ask what he meant by, whatever happens. Wanted to demand the truth about what he was so afraid of. But exhaustion dragged at her, and for the first time in days, she felt safe. Her mate was holding her. The bond was singing. Maybe she could rest, just for a moment. Tomorrow she'd demand answers. Tomorrow she'd make him explain everything. But tonight, she'd let herself have this, his arms around her, his heartbeat steady against her back, the warmth of his body keeping the darkness at bay. Even if Serafina was right. Even if this was temporary. Even if she was living on borrowed time. At least she'd have this one perfect moment before the real nightmare began. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 3. Elara woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the feeling of being wrapped in warmth. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was, only that she felt safe for the first time in days. Then awareness returned. The scent of pine and smoke. The solid wall of muscle at her back. The arm draped protectively over her waist. Thorn. She was in the king's bed, curled against him like they'd slept this way 1,000 times before. The mate bond hummed contentedly between them, no longer the aching, poisonous thing that had been slowly killing her. Their proximity had stabilized it, soothed it back from the edge. Elara shifted slightly, testing whether she could move without waking him. The arm around her waist tightened immediately. Don't. Thorn's voice was rough with sleep. Just, stay. Please. The vulnerability in that single word made her chest ache. This was the man who'd avoided her for days, who'd put her in distant chambers and refused to even look at her. Now he was holding her like she might disappear if he let go. I'm not going anywhere, she said softly. She felt him exhale against her hair, some of the tension leaving his body. They lay there in silence as the sun climbed higher, neither willing to break the fragile peace. Finally, Thorn spoke. How do you feel? Better. Stronger. Elara turned in his arms so she could see his face. Up close, she could see the dark circles under his eyes, the new lines of strain around his mouth. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. You look terrible. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Charming. I'm serious. When was the last time you actually rested? 4 days ago. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with heartbreaking gentleness. Before the ceremony. Before I knew I'd found you and doomed you in the same breath. There it was again, that anguish, that guilt. Elara covered his hand with hers. Thorn, talk to me. Please. Whatever you're afraid of, whatever you've been protecting me from, I deserve to know. She watched him struggle with it, saw the moment he made his decision. He sat up slowly, and Elara followed, pulling the silk sheet around herself as she settled against the headboard beside him. Thorn stared at his hands for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat, emotionless, the tone of a man reciting his own death sentence. I'm cursed. Every mate I claim dies within 3 full moons. The words hung in the air between them. Elara's first instinct was to deny it, to say that was impossible. But the look on Thorn's face stopped her. How? She whispered. I don't know. Dark magic, a witch's vengeance, some ancient wrong my bloodline committed. I've searched for answers for 3 years and found nothing. He ran a hand through his dark hair, making it stand up in spikes. What I do know is that 2 women are dead because of me. 2. Elara's stomach dropped. You've had other mates? Not fated mates. Not like you. Thorn looked at her then, his dark eyes haunted. The first was Lyanna. We weren't fated, but we cared for each other. The council was pressuring me to produce an heir, and she was a good choice, strong bloodline, political connections. We performed the claiming ceremony 4 years ago. He paused, his jaw working. 3 full moons later, she died in her sleep. No marks on her body, no poison in her system. The physicians found nothing. She just stopped breathing. Like something had stolen the life from her. Elara reached for his hand. He let her take it, his fingers gripping hers like a lifeline. I thought it was a terrible coincidence. Tragic, but these things happen. Then 2 years ago, I tried again. Cassandra. Another good match, another claiming ceremony. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. She lasted 2.5 moons before she was found at the bottom of the East Tower stairs. They said she must have fallen, but Cassandra was the most sure-footed person I knew. She'd climbed those stairs 1,000 times. Oh God. Elara's free hand pressed to her mouth. After that, I started researching. Called in every witch, every scholar, every expert on curses I could find. They all confirmed what I already knew: something is killing my mates. Something tied to the claiming bond itself. The more complete the bond, the more powerful the magic that hunts them. Thorn turned to face her fully. That's why I avoided you. Why I kept you at a distance. If I never completed the bond, if I never truly claimed you, maybe you'd be safe. But the incomplete bond was killing us both, Elara said slowly, understanding dawning. I know. I thought. I hoped that maybe if I could resist long enough, the bond would fade enough that you could survive without me. That you could go back to your life. He laughed bitterly. Stupid. Marcus tried to tell me it wouldn't work, that a fated bond is different from a chosen one. Stronger. More permanent. I was just too much of a coward to face the truth. What truth? That loving you, claiming you properly, will kill you. Just like it killed Lyanna and Cassandra. Thorn's voice cracked. I went to that ceremony planning to find my fated mate one last time. One last attempt to see if the goddess's choice could somehow break the curse. And if it didn't work, if we couldn't find a solution before the claiming killed you, I was going to accept Seraphina's proposal and live the rest of my life alone. Seraphina. Elara's voice hardened. She said you two had an understanding. A political arrangement, nothing more. She gets to be queen, I get heirs without risking a mate's life, and the council stops breathing down my neck about succession. Thorn shook his head. But then you sat down next to me, and I caught your scent, and everything changed. I knew instantly you were my fated mate. My true mate. And I knew I was looking at your death. Silence fell between them. Elara's mind raced, trying to process everything. 2 dead women. A curse with no known source. 3 full moons, roughly 3 months, before the magic killed her too. The logical part of her brain screamed at her to run. To reject the bond, to leave the palace, to put as much distance between herself and Thorn as possible. But her wolf growled in defiance. And her heart, her stubborn, foolish heart, refused to accept this. No, she said firmly. Thorn blinked. No. No. I'm not accepting this. Elara turned to face him fully, steel in her spine. You said you've been searching for 3 years. Fine. We'll search harder. There has to be a source, every curse has one. Every spell can be broken. Elara. Don't. She gripped his hand tighter. Don't you dare give up on us before we've even tried. I didn't ask for this bond, didn't ask to be your mate, but the goddess chose us for a reason. Maybe that reason is to break this curse once and for all. You could die. I was dying anyway, alone in that suite while you avoided me. At least this way, I'm fighting for something. Fighting for us. She leaned closer, her eyes fierce. I'm not Lyanna or Cassandra. I'm not going to lie down and wait for death. We have 3 full moons. That's 3 months to find answers. And if we don't? Then we don't. But at least we'll have tried. At least we'll have had 3 months together instead of wasting them in fear. Elara cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. I choose you, Thorn. I choose this bond. Curse and all. She watched emotions flicker across his face: hope, fear, love, desperation. Then he pulled her to him, his lips crashing against hers with a hunger that stole her breath. This wasn't like the chaste kiss at the ceremony. This was need and claim and promise all wrapped into one. The mate bond roared to life between them, burning bright and fierce. Elara gasped against his mouth, feeling it settle into place properly for the first time, not just connection but completion. Thorn gentled the kiss, his hands framing her face with a reverence that made her heart ache. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. 3 months, he said hoarsely. We find the source of this curse in 3 months or... We'll find it. Elara's voice was certain. We have to. They spent the day together, and for the first time since the ceremony, Elara glimpsed what their life could be. Thorn showed her his private library, a massive room filled with books on werewolf history, magic, curses, and bloodline lore. They pored over texts together, looking for any clue they might have missed. Marcus joined them at midday, relief evident on his face when he saw them working side by side. Thank the goddess. I was beginning to think you'd both die of stubbornness. Still might, Thorn said grimly. But at least we're dying together. Not helping. Elara threw a quill at him. They ordered food brought to the library and barely touched it. Time seemed to slip away as they read, discussed theories, and argued over possibilities. Thorn told her everything about Lyanna and Cassandra, their personalities, their deaths, the investigations that had turned up nothing. Elara listened and took notes, her mind working through the puzzle. What about similarities, she asked. Between your previous mates? Anything they had in common besides you? Thorn frowned, thinking. Both were from prominent families. Both had strong wolf bloodlines. Both were. He trailed off. What? Both were chosen by the council. They suggested Lyanna specifically, and Cassandra was their second choice after Lyanna died. His eyes sharpened. I never thought about that before. So someone on the council could be involved? Or someone with access to the council's recommendations? Marcus leaned forward. That's a lead we haven't explored. We'll start tomorrow, Thorn decided. Quietly. If someone in the palace is behind this, I don't want to tip them off. As evening fell, exhaustion finally caught up with Elara. The bond's sickness had taken more out of her than she'd realized. Thorn noticed her fading and insisted she rest. Stay, she said when he started to leave. Please. I sleep better when you're here. Something softened in his face. I'm not going anywhere. They lay down together on the library's velvet couch, Elara curled against his chest, his arms wrapped around her. The mate bond pulsed contentedly between them, warm and stable. Thank you, Thorn murmured into her hair. For not giving up on us. Thank you for finally letting me in. Elara yawned. We'll figure this out. I promise. I hope you're right. She drifted off to the sound of his heartbeat, feeling safer than she had in days. The attack came in the depths of night. One moment Elara was dreaming of running through a moonlit forest, Thorn at her side. The next, ice-cold hands wrapped around her throat, choking off her air. Her eyes flew open to darkness. The library was pitch black, the candles long since burned out. But she could feel it, something pressing down on her, crushing her windpipe with inhuman strength. She tried to scream but couldn't make a sound. Tried to shift but her wolf wouldn't respond. Panic flooded through her as her lungs burned for air. Then Thorn was there, roaring, his hands passing through something she couldn't see as he tried to pull it off her. Guards. Now. The pressure on her throat intensified. Black spots danced across her vision. This was it, the curse had found her. Lights suddenly blazed as guards burst through the doors, torches held high. The moment the light touched Elara, the presence vanished. Just, gone. She gasped, air rushing painfully back into her lungs as she curled on her side, coughing. Thorn gathered her against his chest, his heart pounding. Search the room. Every corner. Find what attacked her. The guards spread out, but Alara already knew they'd find nothing. Whatever had tried to kill her wasn't something that could be caught by ordinary means. Your Majesty. One of the guards approached cautiously. There's no one here. No windows open, no signs of forced entry. There was something here, Thorn snarled. I felt it. Alara touched her throat gingerly. Already, she could feel bruises forming. It started, she whispered. The curse. It's begun. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 4. The palace physician arrived within minutes, but it was the woman who followed him that made Alara's wolf stir with recognition. Elder Moira was ancient, no one knew exactly how old, with silver hair that fell to her waist and eyes the color of moonlight. She moved with the slow grace of someone who'd seen centuries pass, her plain gray robes whispering against the marble floors. Power radiated from her like heat from a forge, making the guards instinctively step back. She was the palace witch, keeper of old magic, and she hadn't been seen outside her tower in over a year. Move aside. Moira's voice carried absolute authority despite its softness. The physician and guards obeyed instantly. She knelt beside the couch where Alara still sat wrapped in Thorn's arms, her weathered hands reaching for Alara's throat. Let me see, child. Alara tilted her head back, wincing as Moira's fingers traced the bruises forming around her neck. But the witch's sharp intake of breath wasn't about the injuries. Thorn. Moira's moonlight eyes fixed on the king. Bring me light. All of it. More candles were lit, then torches, until the library blazed bright as midday. In the harsh light, Alara saw what had made Moira gasp. The bruises on her throat weren't the purple-black of normal injuries. They were shot through with silver, thin, luminescent lines that traced patterns across her skin like veins of starlight. What is that? Thorn demanded, his arm tightening around Alara. Moira didn't answer. Her hands moved to Alara's wrists, pushing up her sleeves. More silver marks spiraled up her forearms, delicate and intricate. The witch pressed her palm flat against Alara's chest, directly over her heart, and closed her eyes. Magic pulsed through the touch, warm and searching, diving deep beneath Alara's skin. Her wolf whimpered and pressed close to something ancient stirring inside her, something she'd never felt before. Moira's eyes flew open. Impossible, she breathed. You're alive. You're actually alive. What are you talking about? Alara's voice was hoarse from the attack. The witch sat back on her heels, studying Alara like she was a puzzle that had suddenly rearranged itself. You're not a true Omega. Silence fell like a stone. Marcus, who joined them when the guards were called, stepped closer. Elder Moira, I don't understand. Her bloodline has been suppressed. Bound by powerful magic when she was very young. Moira's weathered face was pale. Magic designed to hide what she truly is. I'm an Omega, Alara said, though uncertainty crept into her voice. I've always been. You've always been told you were an Omega. You've always felt like one because that's what the binding made you believe. Moira stood slowly, her moonlight eyes never leaving Alara's face. But those marks, those are silver veins. They only appear in one bloodline. One line that was supposed to have died out 3 centuries ago. Thorn's hand found Alara's, gripping tight. What bloodline? The Moon Priestesses. The words fell into the room like a bomb. Even Marcus looked shocked, his normally composed face showing naked disbelief. Alara shook her head. That's impossible. The Moon Priestesses were wiped out during the Purge. Every history book says. Every history book is wrong. Moira began to pace, her robes swirling. Or rather, incomplete. Yes, most of the priestesses were killed. Their temples burned, their magic deemed too dangerous by the Alpha Council of the time. But a few survived. They went into hiding, suppressed their power, lived as ordinary wolves. She turned to face Alara. Your ancestors were among them. Elara's mind reeled. The moon priestesses were legend, women blessed by the goddess herself with magic powerful enough to break any curse, heal any wound, even speak directly to the divine. They'd been the spiritual leaders of all werewolf kind until fearful alphas had destroyed them, afraid of power they couldn't control. How do you know? Thorn asked quietly. How can you be certain? Because I was there during the purge. I watched them burn. Moira's voice was heavy with old grief. I survived only because I was young enough to hide my power completely. But I knew the signs, knew what true priestess magic looked like. And these, she gestured to the silver marks on Elara's skin, are undeniable. When the curse attacked her, when dark magic tried to kill her, her dormant power rose to defend itself. The silver marks are her priestess blood trying to break through the binding. Then she can fight the curse. Hope blazed in Thorn's eyes. If she's a moon priestess. If she unlocks her full power, yes. Priestess magic is the only thing strong enough to break a curse of this magnitude. Moira's expression turned grave. But the binding on her bloodline is ancient and strong. Breaking it will require more than just knowledge. It will require truth. What kind of truth? Elara asked, though dread already pooled in her stomach. Moira moved to sit beside her, taking both of Elara's hands in her weathered ones. Child, what do you remember of your parents? The question felt like a knife. They died when I was 7. A car accident. I went to live with my aunt after. And your aunt, she was the one who told you that you were an Omega? Who explained your wolf to you? Yes, but... Elara frowned. What does that have to do with? There was no car accident. Moira's grip tightened. Your parents were murdered, Elara. Killed by someone who knew what they were, who knew what you would become. And the binding on your bloodline, that wasn't placed by your ancestors for protection. It was forced on you as a child, designed to hide you from whoever wanted your family dead. The room spun. Elara heard Thorn cursing softly, felt his arm come around her shoulders, but it all seemed distant. No. That's not, my aunt said. Your aunt was likely part of it. Either complicit or forced to lie. Moira's moonlight eyes held infinite compassion. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this. But if you want to break the binding, if you want to access your true power and fight this curse, you must first face the truth about who you are and what was done to you. Tears burned in Elara's eyes. All these years, she believed her parents had died in a tragic accident. Had mourned them while being grateful her aunt had taken her in. Never questioned why she had no other family, why her aunt had moved them to a new city immediately after, why they'd lived so quietly and carefully. Who killed them? Her voice broke on the question. Who wanted us dead? That, I don't know. But whoever it was had access to powerful magic, the kind that doesn't come cheap or easy. Moira released Elara's hands and stood. I'll need time to research the binding spell, to find a way to safely break it without destroying you in the process. Meanwhile, those silver marks will continue to appear whenever you're threatened. Your power is trying to protect you, even through the binding. How long do we have? Thorn asked. How long before the curse tries again? Hours. Days. It's impossible to say. Moira moved toward the door, then paused. But Thorn, the curse has never faced a priestess before. That might be exactly what we need to end this. After she left, taking the guards and physician with her, Elara sat in silence, trying to process everything. Her entire life had been a lie. Her parents hadn't died accidentally, they'd been murdered. Her Omega status was a magical prison designed to hide her. She wasn't even who she thought she was. Elara. Thorn's voice was gentle. Look at me. She turned to find him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. I don't know who I am anymore. You're my mate. That's all that matters. He cupped her face, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. Everything else, your bloodline, your power, your past, we'll figure it out together. But you are still you. Still the woman who refused to accept death, who insisted we fight this curse. Nothing changes that. Everything changes it. But Alara leaned into his touch anyway, drawing strength from his presence. If I'm really a moon priestess, then you're even more remarkable than I thought. And we actually have a chance to break this curse. Thorn kissed her forehead, then her cheeks, then her lips, soft, reverent kisses that made the mate bond glow warm between them. But first, you're moving into my chambers. Permanently. I'm not letting you out of my sight until this is over. Thorn. Not negotiable. His voice turned fierce. That thing attacked you while I was right beside you. What if I hadn't woken up? What if the guards had been seconds slower? His jaw clenched. I won't risk it. From now on, you stay where I can protect you. Part of Alara wanted to argue, to insist she wasn't some fragile thing that needed constant guarding. But the bruises on her throat throbbed with every breath, and the memory of those ice-cold hands choking the life from her was too fresh. Okay, she whispered. Your chambers. Relief flickered across his face. Thank you. They moved her things before dawn, not that she had much to move. The beautiful wardrobe Helen had stocked felt like someone else's clothes now. Alara stood in Thorn's private suite, watching servants arrange her belongings, and felt untethered. Who was she, really? Not the Omega she believed herself to be. Not the simple girl who'd accidentally sat next to a king. Somewhere beneath the binding spell, beneath the lies, was someone else entirely. Someone powerful enough to break curses. Someone dangerous enough to murder. Hey. Thorn appeared beside her, pressing a warm mug into her hands. Tea. Moira's blend, supposed to help with shock. Alara sipped it gratefully, the herbs soothing her raw throat. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just, stay alive. He pulled her against his side, and they stood together watching the sunrise paint the sky gold and pink. We'll get through this. I promise. You can't promise that. Watch me. He turned her to face him, his dark eyes burning with determination. I've lost 2 mates to this curse. I won't lose you. Whatever it takes, whatever power we have to unlock, whatever truth we have to face, we're ending this. The conviction in his voice made something fierce rise in Alara's chest. Maybe she didn't know who she was yet. Maybe her entire past was built on lies. But this, Thorn, the bond between them, the future they were fighting for, this was real. Together, she said firmly. Together. They spent the next 2 days buried in research. Moira provided ancient texts on moon priestesses and binding spells. Marcus dug into the council records from the time of Lyanna and Cassandra's deaths. Thorn used his authority to quietly investigate members of his own court. And slowly, carefully, Alara and Thorn shared the pieces of themselves they'd kept hidden. He told her about the pressure of being king, about the loneliness of ruling alone, about the guilt that haunted him every time he looked at the portraits of Lyanna and Cassandra in the palace hall. She told him about growing up feeling like she never quite fit, about the aunt who'd been cold and distant, about the strange dreams she'd had as a child, dreams of silver light and ancient songs. They grew closer with every shared secret, every vulnerable confession. The mate bond deepened, settling into something unshakable. On the 3rd night, Alara was sorting through a stack of documents Marcus had pulled from the archives when something slipped from between 2 reports. A small leather journal, worn at the edges. She opened it carefully, and her breath caught. The first page was dated 4 years ago, written in elegant script, property of Lyanna Ashford. Thorn. Her voice came out strangled. Thorn, look at this. He crossed the room immediately, Marcus close behind. They huddled around as Alara flipped through the pages, diary entries detailing Lyanna's life as Thorn's chosen mate, her hopes for their future, her concerns about court politics. The entries grew shorter toward the end. More worried. Then, on what must have been just days before her death, a single line that made Alara's blood run cold. Serafina knows. She's the one. The entry ended there, the sentence unfinished. As if Lyanna had been interrupted. Or silenced. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 5. Serafina knows. She's the one. The words seemed to burn on the page. Elara read them again, her hands trembling, hoping she'd misunderstood. But there was no mistaking Lyanna's elegant script or the terror implicit in that unfinished sentence. Thorn had gone absolutely still beside her, his face carved from stone. Marcus swore softly, running a hand through his sandy hair. She killed them. Thorn's voice was deadly quiet. Serafina killed Lyanna. Probably Cassandra too. But why? Elara flipped through the remaining pages, but they were blank. Lyanna had never gotten a chance to finish her thought. What would Serafina gain from me? Thorn's jaw clenched. She's been circling for years, always available, always the perfect political match. After Cassandra died, she was the one who suggested a marriage alliance. Said it would stabilize the kingdom, give me heirs without risking another mate. His hands curled into fists. I thought she was being pragmatic. I didn't realize she was behind it all. We need to confront her, Marcus said grimly. Bring her before the council, have Moira examine her for dark magic. A knock sounded at the door, sharp and precise. All three of them turned as Helen, the palace coordinator, stepped inside. Her professional composure was intact, but something in her eyes suggested worry. Your Majesty, Lady Serafina has requested an immediate private audience. She says it's urgent. Elara's wolf bristled. The timing was too perfect, as if Serafina had sensed them finding the journal, discovering her secret. Tell her I'm busy, Thorn said coldly. She insisted I mention that it concerns the deaths of your previous mates, Your Majesty. She said you'd want to hear what she has to say. Helen's discomfort was obvious. She's waiting in the blue receiving room. Thorn and Elara exchanged glances. This could be a trap, but it could also be their chance to get the truth. I'm coming with you, Elara said before Thorn could argue. Absolutely not. If she's dangerous, then you need me there. I'm not helpless, Thorn. Elara touched the silver marks on her wrist, still faintly visible. And if what Moira says is true, I might be the only one who can actually fight her magic. Thorn looked like he wanted to lock her in his chambers and face Serafina alone. But after a long moment, he nodded. Fine. But Marcus comes too, and guards stay outside the door. Already arranged, Your Majesty, Helen said quietly. The blue receiving room was elegant and intimate, designed for private conversations. Serafina stood by the window, backlit by afternoon sun, looking every inch the perfect lady in a gown of ice blue silk. She turned as they entered, her expression serene. Thorn. How kind of you to make time. Her gaze slid to Elara, and something cold flickered in her eyes. And you brought the Omega. How cozy. What do you want, Serafina? Thorn's voice could have cut glass. Straight to business. I always admired that about you. Serafina moved away from the window, her movements fluid and graceful. I assume you found Lyanna's journal by now. Sloppy of me to leave it behind, but I was in rather a hurry that night. The casual admission hit like a punch. Marcus stepped forward instinctively, but Thorn raised a hand, stopping him. So you admit it, Thorn said softly. You killed her. I killed them both. Serafina's smile was sharp as a blade. Lyanna and Cassandra. Both of them stood in my way, so I removed them. Just like I would have removed the Omega here if she hadn't turned out to be so unexpectedly interesting. Elara's wolf snarled inside her, but she forced herself to stay calm. You cursed him. The deaths weren't random, you cast a spell to kill his mates. Very good. Serafina's ice blue eyes gleamed with something that looked almost like pride. I'm impressed you worked it out so quickly. Then again, Moira always was perceptive. I assume she's the one who identified your little bloodline secret? The way she said it, casual, knowing, made Alara's stomach drop. You knew. You knew what I was. Of course I knew. I'm the one who had your parents killed, after all. Serafina examined her perfect manicure as if discussing the weather. The moon priestesses were supposed to be extinct. Imagine my surprise when my sources discovered a breeding pair hiding in plain sight, raising a daughter who would one day inherit their power. I couldn't allow that. Rage blazed through Alara, white-hot and consuming. You murdered them. You stole my childhood, my identity. I did you a favor. Serafina's voice turned sharp. If I'd known you were Thorn's fated mate, I would have killed you too. But the binding spell I commissioned hid you beautifully. You vanished into obscurity, just another Omega, beneath my notice. Her smile returned. Until the goddess decided to meddle at the worst possible moment. Thorn moved in front of Alara, protective and deadly. Why? Why curse me? What did I ever do to you? For the first time, real emotion cracked through Serafina's composure, fury and something that looked disturbingly like hurt. You rejected me. 8 years ago, when I offered myself to you, when I would have given you everything, you looked at me like I was nothing. Like I was just another social climbing noble's daughter trying to seduce her way to the throne. Because that's exactly what you were, Thorn said flatly. I loved you. The words tore from Serafina, raw and angry. I was 18 years old and stupid enough to believe in fairy tales. But you didn't even consider me. Just sent me away with some polite dismissal about not being ready for a mate. Her laugh was bitter. So I decided if I couldn't have you, no one would. I spent years studying dark magic, making deals with forces you can't imagine, all to create the perfect curse. One that would kill anyone you tried to claim, leaving you alone and desperate. And then you'd swoop in to save him, Alara said quietly, understanding. Offer yourself as the solution. A loveless political marriage where he'd never actually claim you, never complete a true bond, so the curse wouldn't kill you. Clever girl. Serafina's eyes glittered. I would have been queen without the risk, and Thorn would have been mine in every way that mattered. It was perfect. Her gaze hardened. Until you sat in that seat and ruined 8 years of planning. Thorn's power filled the room, making the air thick and heavy with his alpha dominance. You're insane. I'm committed. Serafina smoothed her gown, composure sliding back into place like armor. But I'm also practical. Which is why I'm here to offer you a deal. I don't make deals with murderers. You will if you want the Omega to live. Serafina's smile was cruel. The curse is tied to my blood magic. Only I can break it. So here's my proposition, reject the Omega, marry me instead, and I'll lift the curse. She lives, you get your heirs, and I finally get what I should have had 8 years ago. No. Thorn's answer was immediate and absolute. Think carefully, Your Majesty. The first full moon rises in 3 weeks. That's when the curse will strike in earnest, not shadow creatures that can be frightened away, but real death. Inevitable, unstoppable, unless I choose to prevent it. Serafina's gaze shifted to Alara. She might have priestess blood, but she's nowhere near strong enough to fight what's coming. You'll watch her die slowly, painfully, knowing you could have saved her. I said no. Thorn stepped closer, his voice dropping to a lethal growl. You'll break that curse, Serafina. One way or another. Even if I have to drag you before every witch in the kingdom until one of them finds a way to undo your magic. Serafina's expression hardened. Wrong answer. She moved fast, faster than any normal wolf, her hand lifting as dark energy crackled around her fingers. The attack came like a spear of shadow, aimed directly at Alara's heart. Instinct took over. Alara threw up her hands, and silver light exploded from her palms. The magic came from somewhere deep inside her, from the place where her true power had been sleeping for 20 years. It was raw and untrained, but devastating, a shield of pure silver energy that caught Serafina's attack and threw it back. The dark witch stumbled, shock flickering across her face. Impossible. The binding should have kept me weak and helpless. Elara's hands still glowed with silver light, the priestess magic singing through her veins. You made a mistake killing my parents. You made me angry. Serafina recovered quickly, dark energy building around her again. Then I'll finish what I started. But before she could attack, the doors burst open. The royal council flooded in, 8 high-ranking nobles and advisors, with Helen trailing behind looking horrified. Your Majesty. Lord Aldrich, the council leader, took in the scene with widening eyes. What is the meaning of this? Serafina's magic vanished instantly, her expression smoothing into perfect innocence. Thank the goddess you've arrived, my lords. The Omega attacked me. I fear the bond's sickness has affected her mind. Liar. Elara started forward, but Thorn caught her arm. She's lying, Thorn said coldly to the council. Lady Serafina just confessed to murdering my previous mates and cursing me with dark magic. The council members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Lord Aldrich cleared his throat. Your Majesty, those are serious accusations. Do you have proof? We have Lioness' journal. Marcus held it up. Her final entry names Serafina. A journal that could have been forged. An incomplete sentence that proves nothing. Serafina's voice was calm, reasonable. My lords, I came here today to warn His Majesty that the Omega is dangerous. I've had reports she's been practicing forbidden magic, claiming to be a moon priestess. Because I am one, Elara interrupted. Elder Moira confirmed it. That caused a stir. The council members whispered among themselves, some looking intrigued, others alarmed. All the more reason for caution, Lord Aldrich said carefully. Your Majesty, the priestesses were destroyed for a reason. Their power was deemed too dangerous, too unpredictable. If your mate truly carries that bloodline, then she's exactly what we need to break the curse, Thorn said firmly. Or she's what will destroy us all. Serafina's voice turned urgent, almost pleading. My lords, I've served this kingdom faithfully for years. I've offered stability, alliance, everything a queen should provide. But this Omega brings only chaos and death. Already there have been attacks, disturbances. How long before her uncontrolled power harms innocent people? That's not, Elara began, but Serafina talked over her. I've seen what happens when priestess magic runs wild. My own grandmother died in the purge, killed by a priestess who lost control and burned half a city. Serafina's eyes glistened with what looked like genuine tears. I only want to protect this kingdom. Protect Thorn. If he rejects the Omega now, before the bond is complete, they both might survive. I can help facilitate a clean break, ensure neither of them dies from bond's sickness. But he must choose, the kingdom's safety, or his selfish desire for a fated mate who will bring us all to ruin. The council erupted in argument. Some defended Elara, others sided with Serafina. Lord Aldrich called for order, his face grave. Your Majesty, he said when silence finally fell. The council must insist on a formal investigation into these allegations. But in the meantime, for the kingdom's security, we recommend you take precautions with your mate. What kind of precautions? Thorn's voice was dangerous. Distance. Separation. Perhaps even a temporary rejection of the bond, until we can determine the truth. No. Thorn pulled Elara closer. I won't reject her based on lies and fear. Then you risk everything. Lord Aldrich's voice was heavy. Your Majesty, we're not asking lightly. But if Lady Serafina's concerns have merit, if the Omega's power truly is dangerous, then I'll teach her to control it, Thorn said firmly. I won't abandon my mate. Serafina's expression flickered, just for a moment, with vicious satisfaction. As if this was exactly what she'd wanted him to say. Very well. Lord Aldrich sighed. The council will convene an emergency session tomorrow to discuss this matter further. Until then, Your Majesty, we strongly advise caution. They filed out, some casting sympathetic looks at Alara, others viewing her with suspicion and fear. Seraphina was the last to leave, pausing in the doorway. You've made your choice, Thorn. I hope it's worth it when you're watching her burn. She smiled sweetly at Alara. Sleep well, priestess. You'll need your strength for what's coming. Then she was gone, leaving only the scent of her perfume and the echo of her threat. The council session the next morning was brutal. Alara sat beside Thorn on a raised platform while nobles and advisors debated her fate like she wasn't even there. Some argued for her immediate exile. Others wanted her imprisoned and studied. A few brave souls defended her right to stay with her mate. Through it all, Seraphina sat in the gallery, her expression perfectly composed, occasionally whispering to council members who leaned in to hear her words. Finally, Lord Aldrich called for a vote. The motion is this: shall the king be required to reject his mate for the kingdom's protection? The vote was close. Too close. In the end, it failed by only 2 votes. However, Lord Aldrich continued, the council unanimously agrees that Lady Seraphina's concerns warrant consideration. Your Majesty, we cannot force you to reject your mate. But we can, and do, recommend it strongly. For the sake of the kingdom. For the sake of your people. No. Thorn's voice rang clear. I've already lost 2 mates to this curse. I won't give up a third without a fight. Alara heard the words, felt them resonate through the bond. But something in Thorn's posture was wrong. Something in the way he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. Lord Aldrich nodded slowly. Then we are at an impasse. This council is adjourned. As wolves began filing out, Thorn finally turned to Alara. The look in his eyes made her heart stop. I'm sorry, he whispered. I have to do this. I have to keep you safe. Thorn, what? He stood, his alpha power flooding the room, commanding attention. The exodus stopped. Everyone turned back to watch. I've reconsidered the council's recommendation. Thorn's voice was steady, emotionless. For the protection of this kingdom and the woman I care about, I hereby reject the mate bond between myself and Alara Winters. The words hit like a physical blow. Alara gasped, her hand flying to her chest as agony exploded through the bond. No. No, he couldn't. I reject you as my mate, Thorn continued, each word falling like a hammer. I sever this bond, as is my right as Alpha King. The mate bond began to tear. Alara felt it ripping away from her soul, felt her wolf howling in betrayal and anguish. Silver light flickered around her hands as her priestess power surged in response to the pain, but she couldn't control it, couldn't think through the agony. Thorn, please, her voice broke. He finally looked at her, and she saw tears on his face. I'm sorry. But this is the only way to save you. Then he turned and walked out of the council chamber, leaving Alara collapsing to her knees as the bond between them shattered like glass. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 6. Alara woke in her old chambers in the West Wing, though she had no memory of being brought there. Her chest felt hollow, like someone had reached in and ripped out her heart. The mate bond, what remained of it, was a ragged, bleeding wound in her soul. Thorn had rejected her. In front of the entire council. In front of Seraphina. Her wolf was barely present, a whimpering shadow curled in the darkest corner of her mind. The silver marks on her skin had faded to almost nothing. Even her priestess power seemed to have retreated, unable to function through the devastation of a severed bond. A knock sounded at her door. Alara didn't answer, didn't move. Let them think she was dead. Maybe she was. The door opened anyway. Marcus stepped inside, his expression grim. He carried a tray with food she wouldn't eat and tea she wouldn't drink. Go away, Alara's voice was hoarse from screaming, or maybe from crying. She couldn't remember which. I can't do that. Marcus set the tray down and pulled a chair close to her bed. Elara, listen to me. What happened in that council chamber? Don't. She turned her face away. Don't tell me it was necessary. Don't tell me he did it to protect me. I don't care about his reasons. He destroyed us. He's pretending. The words took a moment to penetrate the fog of grief. Elara turned slowly, not sure she'd heard correctly. What? The rejection. It's not real. Marcus leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Thorn is deceiving Seraphina. Making her think she's won so we can plan our attack. Elara stared at him. That's not possible. I felt the bond breaking. I felt him sever it. You felt him weaken it. There's a difference. Marcus pulled a small leather-bound book from his jacket. Moira gave me this. It's about mate bonds and the different types of rejection. A true rejection, the kind that kills both parties, requires both mates to accept it. But an alpha king has the power to partially sever a bond, to make it appear broken while keeping a thread intact. It's dangerous and painful, but it can be done. He opened the book to a marked page, showing her the relevant passage. Elara read it 3 times, her heart starting to beat faster. So we're still connected? Barely. By the thinnest strand. Marcus's expression was sympathetic. But that strand is enough to keep you both alive while Thorn convinces Seraphina that he's truly rejected you. Once she believes she's won, once she lets her guard down, we strike. Why didn't he tell me? Anger blazed through the grief. Why let me think? Because your reaction had to be genuine. Seraphina is watching everything. If you'd known, if you'd acted even slightly off, she would have seen through it. Marcus gripped her hand. I know it hurts. I know it feels like betrayal. But Thorn is dying inside right now. The partial rejection is killing him too, just slower. He did this to buy us time to find a way to destroy Seraphina and break the curse for good. Elara closed her eyes, trying to feel that thread Marcus mentioned. There, so faint she'd missed it in her anguish, was a whisper of the bond. Not broken, just sleeping. Waiting. What do I do? She whispered. You play along. You appear devastated, heartbroken, defeated. You stay in these chambers and let everyone believe you're wasting away. Marcus's voice turned steel. And in secret, you train with Moira. You unlock your priestess power completely. Because when we make our move against Seraphina, you're going to be our only weapon strong enough to defeat her. The next week was the hardest of Elara's life. During the day, she played the rejected mate, staying in her rooms, barely eating, letting the servants whisper about how she was fading. Helen visited with updates delivered in pitying tones. The palace physician checked on her daily, shaking his head at her weakening condition. But every night, after the palace slept, Moira came. The ancient witch brought texts and artifacts, teaching Elara about the power sleeping in her blood. They couldn't do much, any major magical display might alert Seraphina, but Moira worked on breaking down the binding spell piece by piece. Your parents placed layers of protection in this binding, Moira explained one night, her weathered hands glowing with silver light as she examined Elara's wrists. Even when Seraphina's hired witch tried to suppress you, your mother's magic fought back. That's why you survived when your parents didn't. Tell me about them. Elara needed to know. Needed to understand who she'd come from. Moira smiled sadly. Your mother, Elena, was one of the strongest priestesses I ever knew. She could have led our order if we'd still had one. Your father, David, wasn't a priestess bloodline, but his wolf was pure and powerful. They loved each other desperately. She paused. And they loved you enough to bind your power, to hide you, hoping you'd survive long enough to reclaim what was yours. Every night, Elara felt the binding weaken a little more. The silver marks returned, spreading up her arms like vines. Her wolf grew stronger, no longer the whimpering shadow but something fierce and bright. And the priestess magic, it called to her now, singing in her blood, waiting to be fully unleashed. But the thread connecting her to Thorn remained agonizingly thin. She could feel him sometimes, in the depths of night, his pain, his determination, his love bleeding through despite the partial rejection. It was the only thing that kept her going. That, and rage at Serafina. The state dinner was held exactly 1 week after the rejection. Elara wasn't supposed to attend, rejected mates didn't appear at formal functions. But Helen delivered an invitation that morning with an apologetic expression. Lady Serafina specifically requested your presence, Miss Winters. She said it would be appropriate for you to witness the king's new arrangement. Translation: Serafina wanted to gloat. Wanted to parade her victory in front of the woman she'd defeated. Elara wore the simplest dress in her wardrobe, gray and unadorned, suitable for a rejected maid in mourning. She left her hair down, her face bare of cosmetics. She needed to look broken. The great dining hall glittered with candlelight and crystal. The kingdom's most important nobles filled the long table, dressed in their finest. And at the head table, in the seat that should have been Elara's, sat Serafina. She wore red, a bold choice that screamed triumph. Her blonde hair was swept into an elaborate style, diamonds dripping from her ears and throat. She sat beside Thorn, her hand resting possessively on his arm, her smile radiant. Thorn looked like a man carved from ice. His face was expressionless, his dark eyes empty. He hadn't looked toward Elara once since she'd entered, though she knew he was aware of her presence. The thread between them vibrated with his controlled anguish. Elara was seated at the far end of the hall, tucked away where rejected mates belonged. Close enough to see everything, too far away to participate. Perfect for Serafina's purposes. The dinner progressed with excruciating slowness. Course after course appeared while nobles made toasts to the king's upcoming marriage to Lady Serafina. Some looked genuinely pleased. Others shot sympathetic glances toward Elara. Everyone pretended this was normal, that watching an alpha king marry his rejected mate's murderer was perfectly acceptable. Serafina played her role flawlessly, the gracious future queen, modest yet confident, speaking of her plans to bring prosperity to the kingdom. She touched Thorn frequently, casually, as if she had every right. Each touch made Elara's wolf snarl. Such a lovely couple, the noble beside Elara murmured. Lady Serafina will make an excellent queen. Elara forced herself to nod, to smile weakly, to play the part of the defeated Omega. Inside, her priestess power churned with barely contained fury. Finally, mercifully, the dinner ended. Nobles began filtering out, headed for the ballroom where dancing would continue the celebration. Elara started to slip away, to return to her chambers and let Moira help her process this fresh agony. Miss Winters. Serafina's voice stopped her. A word, please. Elara turned slowly. Serafina stood in the doorway to a private parlor, her smile sharp. This was it, the gloating Marcus had warned her about. I have nothing to say to you, Elara said quietly. But I have so much to say to you. Serafina's eyes glittered. Come now. Don't be rude. Just a moment of your time. Elara followed her into the parlor, keeping her expression defeated and broken. The moment the door closed, Serafina's mask fell away. I won. The words were savage with satisfaction. You actually thought you could keep him. A little Omega nobody with delusions of being a priestess. Did you really think you stood a chance against me? You murdered innocent women, Elara said softly. You killed my parents. You cursed the man you claimed to love. That's not winning. That's madness. Call it what you want. I have Thorn, I'll have the crown, and you have nothing. Serafina circled her like a predator. Your precious mate bond is severed. Your power is still locked away. Oh yes, I can tell. Whatever Moira's been trying to teach you, it hasn't worked. You're still just a weak little Omega playing dress-up. Let her think that. Let her underestimate. Why are you telling me this? Elara asked. You've already won. Why not just let me fade away in peace? Because I want you to know exactly how thoroughly you've lost. Seraphina leaned close, her voice dropping to a whisper. The curse that's killing Thorn's mates? It's anchored to a blood talisman hidden in his coronation crown. As long as that talisman exists, any mate he claims will die. And the only person who can remove it safely is me. Ilara's heart raced. The curse's anchor. That was the information they'd been desperately searching for. So even if he wanted to, Seraphina continued, even if he changed his mind and tried to reclaim you, the curse would kill you the moment the bond completed. You're doomed either way. She smiled. I just wanted you to understand that before you waste away. Consider it a parting gift. She swept out, leaving Ilara alone in the parlor, trembling with a mixture of rage and triumph. They had what they needed. The coronation crown, Thorn's most precious royal regalia, worn only for the most important ceremonies. Ilara had to tell him. Had to find a way to get word to Marcus or Moira. They could retrieve the crown, destroy the talisman. A soft knock made her turn. The door opened, and Thorn slipped inside. For a heartbeat, they just stared at each other. Then Ilara was moving, and so was he, meeting in the middle of the room in a desperate collision. His mouth found hers with the hunger of a man starving. The thin thread of their bond blazed to life, singing with relief and need and love. Ilara wrapped herself around him, needing to feel his solid warmth, needing proof that he was real and here and still hers. I'm sorry, Thorn gasped against her lips. God, Ilara, I'm so sorry. Hurting you nearly killed me. I know. Marcus told me. I understand. She pulled back just enough to see his face, to cup his jaw with shaking hands. Thorn, I found it. The curse's anchor. Seraphina just told me, it's in your coronation crown. A blood talisman. His eyes widened. The crown? That means we can destroy it. We can end this. Hope blazed through her. Once the talisman is gone, the curse breaks. We can complete the bond properly. We can. Thorn kissed her again, deeper this time, pouring everything he couldn't say into the connection between them. Tomorrow night. I'll have Marcus retrieve the crown. Moira can examine it, remove the talisman safely. And then we end Seraphina for good. They stood together in the darkness, holding each other, the bond between them growing stronger with every breath. Tomorrow they'd fight. Tomorrow they'd risk everything. But tonight, they had this. This moment of connection, of hope, of love that even dark magic couldn't fully destroy. Thorn pressed his forehead to hers. I have to go. If I'm seen. I know. Go. Ilara kissed him one more time, soft and sweet. I love you. I love you too. He moved toward the door, pausing to look back at her. Soon. All of this will be over soon, and I'll never let you go again. Then he slipped out, leaving Ilara alone with the echo of his presence and the promise of their future. She waited several minutes before leaving the parlor herself, not wanting them to be seen together. The corridor was empty, the sounds of the ball distant. She made her way back toward the west wing, her mind already planning for tomorrow. She didn't see the figure watching from a shadowed alcove. Didn't notice the servant who'd witnessed Thorn leaving the parlor moments before. Didn't realize that Seraphina had posted spies throughout the palace, waiting for exactly this kind of slip. By the time Ilara reached her chambers, the damage was already done. The report was already being delivered to Lady Seraphina's private rooms. And in those rooms, as Seraphina heard about the king sneaking away to meet his supposedly rejected mate, her face went white with fury. Clever, she hissed. They think they're so clever. Her eyes flashed with dark power. If they wanted to play games, fine. She'd been patient, letting the curse work slowly. But if Thorn and his little priestess thought they could deceive her, they were about to learn exactly what a mistake that was. The first full moon rose tomorrow night. Perfect timing. Seraphina smiled coldly and began weaving the spell that would accelerate the curse, that would bring all her dark magic to bear at once. Tomorrow night, one way or another, this would end. Either the Omega would die, or Seraphina would destroy them all trying. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 7. Elara woke to agony. It started as a dull ache in her chest, like the Bond sickness returning. But within minutes, it had spread through her entire body, a burning, consuming pain that felt like her blood was turning to acid. She tried to call out, but couldn't make her voice work. The silver marks on her skin were glowing, pulsing with erratic light. Her wolf whimpered and retreated deep inside her mind, trying to escape whatever was happening. Through the thin thread of the mate bond, she felt Thorn's alarm. Then his presence was racing toward her, getting closer. The door burst open. Thorn crossed the room in 3 strides, gathering her against his chest. Elara. God, what's happening? Can't breathe. The pain intensified. She looked down at her hands and saw black veins spreading beneath the silver marks, like poison creeping through her system. Marcus. Thorn roared. Get Moira. Now. But even as Marcus's footsteps pounded away, Elara knew. She could feel it in her bones, in the way her wolf was fading, in the wrongness spreading through every cell. The 3rd moon, she gasped. It's tonight, isn't it? Thorn's face went white. No. You're not due to, it's too early. The curse shouldn't be this strong yet. Seraphina knows. Each word was a struggle. She saw you. She's accelerating it. Through the window, Elara could see the sky darkening toward evening. And rising above the horizon, full and silver and deadly, was the moon. The 3rd moon. Her death sentence. Fight it. Thorn held her tighter, as if he could keep her alive through sheer will. Elara, stay with me. We'll get the crown, destroy the talisman. No time. Darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. Her priestess power flickered weakly, trying to fight the curse's poison, but it wasn't enough. The binding spell Seraphina had commissioned all those years ago was still too strong, keeping her true power locked away. She was going to die without ever knowing what she truly was. No. Thorn's voice broke. I won't lose you. Not like this. Not after everything. The windows exploded inward. Glass shattered across the room as shadow creatures poured through, dozens of them, far more than the single one that had attacked before. They were massive, made of living darkness, with eyes that glowed red and claws that looked sharp enough to tear through steel. Thorn shoved Elara behind him, his alpha power flooding the room. Guards. To me. But the shadows were already between them and the door. More creatures crashed through the walls themselves, dark magic allowing them to phase through solid stone. Within seconds, the chamber was full of them, circling like wolves around cornered prey. Marcus burst in with a dozen palace guards, but the shadow creatures simply multiplied. For every one they struck down, 2 more appeared. This wasn't a normal attack, this was Seraphina throwing everything she had into one final, devastating assault. Protect the king. Marcus shouted, but the creatures weren't interested in Thorn. They wanted Elara. She tried to stand, to help fight, but her legs wouldn't hold her. The curse was eating her alive from the inside out, and now Seraphina's shadow army was coming to finish what the poison had started. A creature lunged. Thorn caught it mid-leap, his hands sinking into its shadowy form as his alpha power burned it away. But 3 more took its place, driving him back, separating him from Elara. No. Thorn fought like a man possessed, tearing through shadows with claws and teeth, but there were too many. Elara, run. She couldn't run. Could barely crawl. The black veins had spread up her arms, across her chest. Her heart was slowing, each beat weaker than the last. This was it. This was how she died, watching her mate fight desperately while she lay helpless, the curse and the shadows both claiming her. Then Seraphina walked through the wall. She was radiant with dark power, her ice-blue eyes glowing with triumph. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't have you watched every second? She gestured, and bands of shadow wrapped around Thorn, pinning his arms, driving him to his knees. You tried to deceive me. Pretended to reject her while planning some pathetic rescue. How disappointing. Serafina, stop this. Thorn struggled against the bonds, his alpha power crackling uselessly. She's dying. You've won. Just let her go. Oh, I'll let her go. Serafina's smile was vicious. Straight to the grave with your other mates. At least this way, you'll get to watch. You'll see exactly what your defiance cost. She raised her hand, and the shadow creatures converged on Alara. Alara closed her eyes. She was too weak to fight, too far gone to do anything but accept the end. At least Thorn would survive. At least Serafina couldn't kill him once the mate bond was completely severed by death. Fight. Her mother's voice whispered through her mind, or maybe it was just memory, or maybe it was the priestess power that had been trying to protect her all along. You are Elena's daughter. David's daughter. You carry the light of the moon goddess herself. Fight. The shadows were inches away, their claws reaching for her throat. Alara opened her eyes and stopped accepting death. Her parents hadn't bound her power to make her weak. They'd bound it to keep her alive until she was strong enough to wield it. And if she was going to die anyway, she might as well die fighting. She reached deep inside herself, past the binding spell, past the curse's poison, past every wall and barrier that had been built to contain her. She reached for the core of what she was, not an Omega, not a victim, but a moon priestess, descended from the most powerful magical line in werewolf history. And she ripped the binding apart. Power exploded through her like a supernova. Silver light erupted from Alara's body, so bright it turned night into day. The shadow creatures touching her disintegrated instantly, burned away by pure priestess magic. The black veins in her skin shattered, the curse's poison incinerated by the force of her awakening. She rose to her feet, no longer weak, no longer dying. Her entire body glowed with silver fire. Her eyes were pure white, channeling the moon goddess's power. Her wolf surged back to full strength, howling in triumph. Impossible, Serafina breathed, taking a step back. Alara raised her hands, and silver lightning arced from her fingertips. It tore through the shadow army like they were paper, destroying dozens with each strike. The creatures shrieked and fled, but there was nowhere to run from light this pure, this powerful. Within seconds, the chamber was clear. Every shadow creature gone, burned away by priestess fire. The bonds holding Thorn shattered. He scrambled to his feet, staring at Alara with awe and relief. You did it. You broke the binding. Get the crown, Alara said, her voice echoing with power. The talisman. We end this now. Marcus was already moving, racing toward the vault where the coronation regalia was kept. Serafina snarled and threw a bolt of dark magic at him, but Alara's silver shield intercepted it effortlessly. You can't defeat me, Serafina hissed, dark energy crackling around her hands. I've studied forbidden magic for 8 years. You've been a priestess for 3 minutes. I've been a priestess my whole life. Alara stepped forward, silver fire trailing from her fingers. I just didn't know it. But my blood remembers. My soul remembers. And the goddess herself is guiding my hand. She attacked. The magical duel that followed was devastating. Silver and shadow clashed in the center of the chamber, their powers so immense that the walls cracked and the floor shook. Serafina was skilled and vicious, her dark magic honed by years of study and sacrifice. But Alara had something Serafina didn't, righteous fury and the blessing of the moon goddess. Lightning and shadow, light and darkness, creation and destruction, they threw everything at each other while Thorn and the guards scrambled to get clear. The chamber was being torn apart by their battle, furniture exploding, tapestries burning. You killed my parents. Alara's silver fire intensified, driving Serafina back. You murdered innocent women. You cursed the man I love. He should have been mine. Serafina screamed, her control finally breaking. I loved him first. I offered him everything. Love doesn't murder. Love doesn't curse. Elara's power swelled, fed by her rage and grief and the injustice of everything Seraphina had done. You're not capable of love. You're just a jealous child playing with forces you don't understand. She unleashed a massive wave of silver energy. Seraphina tried to block it, but the sheer power drove her to her knees. Her dark magic flickered, failing against priestess light. Now! Elara shouted. Marcus burst back into the room, carrying the coronation crown. Without hesitation, he hurled it to Elara. She caught it one-handed, her priestess senses immediately detecting the talisman hidden in the largest ruby. It was a small thing, just a drop of blood sealed in crystal and bound with dark spells. But it was the anchor for the curse that had killed Lyanna and Cassandra, that had nearly killed her. Elara closed her fist around it. Silver fire poured through the crown, seeking out the talisman's hiding place. She felt the moment her magic found it, felt the dark spells trying to resist. But priestess magic was older and stronger than any curse. The talisman shattered. The sound was like thunder and breaking glass combined. Dark energy exploded outward from the crown, the curse's anchor destroyed, all that malevolent power suddenly freed. And Seraphina, kneeling in the center of the chamber, opened her mouth and screamed. The dark energy rushed toward her like iron to a magnet. It poured into her body, drawn to the witch who'd created the curse in the first place. Seraphina convulsed, her back arching, her eyes rolling back in her head. What's happening? Thorn moved to Elara's side, pulling her away from Seraphina's writhing form. The curse, when I broke the anchor, all its power had to go somewhere. Horror dawned as Elara watched Seraphina's body begin to change. It's going back to its source. Seraphina's elegant form twisted and grew. Her skin turned gray and leathery. Her fingers elongated into claws. Her face stretched, becoming something between wolf and monster. Dark energy crackled around her, condensing, transforming her into something that should never have existed. When the transformation completed, the thing that had been Seraphina rose to its feet. It was massive, 8 feet tall, with a wolf's head and a woman's body, covered in shadow-like fur that seemed to absorb light. Its eyes burned red with concentrated malice. Its claws dripped with darkness. And the power radiating from it made even Elara's priestess magic recoil. You fool, the creature said in Seraphina's voice, distorted and multiplied. You've made me stronger. All that curse energy, all that dark power I carefully cultivated, now it's mine completely. No anchor, no external talisman. Just pure, concentrated magic. It smiled, revealing fangs that glowed with shadow light. Thank you, little priestess. Now I'll show you what real power looks like. The monster that had been Seraphina lunged, and the real battle began. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 8. The monster crashed into Elara with the force of a freight train, its claws raking toward her throat. She threw up a shield of silver light at the last second, but the impact sent her flying backward into the wall. Stone cracked behind her, dust raining down. Thorn roared and shifted mid-leap, his massive black wolf form tackling the creature that had been Seraphina. They rolled across the floor in a tangle of fur and shadow, claws and teeth. But even Thorn's alpha strength wasn't enough. The monster threw him off like he weighed nothing, dark energy crackling around its claws. Thorn! Elara scrambled to her feet, silver fire already building in her palms. She unleashed it in a concentrated beam, hitting the creature square in the chest. It staggered but didn't fall. The dark magic coating its body absorbed most of the impact, smoking and hissing but holding. The monster laughed, a sound like breaking glass and dying screams. Is that all you have, priestess? I've absorbed years of curse energy. Decades of dark magic. I am power incarnate. It attacked again, moving with impossible speed. Elara barely managed to dodge, her silver light flashing as she countered with strikes of her own. They moved through the destroyed chamber in a deadly dance, shadow and light, darkness and divinity. Marcus and the guards tried to help, but their weapons passed through the monster like it was made of smoke. This was beyond mortal combat. This was magic at its most primal, two opposite forces locked in a battle that would reshape the kingdom. Thorn shifted back to human form, blood streaming from claw marks across his chest. But his eyes blazed gold with alpha dominance, and the mate bond between him and Elara burned bright and fierce. Together, he growled. Elara nodded. They moved as one, Thorn drawing the creature's attention with his alpha power while Elara struck from different angles with her priestess magic. It was working. Slowly, they were wearing it down, forcing it back. But the monster was adapting. Learning their patterns. And with each moment that passed, Elara could feel it growing stronger as it fully merged with the curse's dark energy. You can't win, the creature hissed. Even if you destroy this body, the magic will just find another host. The darkness always survives. Elara froze, a bolt of silver lightning crackling in her raised hand. The creature was right. She could see it now with her priestess senses. The dark magic was too deeply integrated, too powerful. If she destroyed Seraphina completely, the energy would scatter and corrupt everything it touched. It would poison the palace, maybe even the entire kingdom. Violence wasn't the answer. It never had been. Her mother's voice whispered through her mind again, a priestess's greatest power isn't destruction. It's redemption. Elara lowered her hand, letting the lightning dissipate. Thorn, stand down. What? He looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Elara, it's going to. Trust me. She met his eyes, pouring everything she felt through their bond. Please. Thorn hesitated, every instinct screaming at him to protect his mate. But after a heartbeat, he stepped back, giving her space. The monster tilted its grotesque head, confused. What are you doing? Offering you a choice. Elara walked forward slowly, her hands open and empty of magic. Seraphina, I know you're still in there. Buried under all that darkness and hate. I can feel you. Seraphina is gone. There's only power now. No. Elara shook her head. The power is just armor. Protection against the pain you've been carrying for 8 years. The pain of rejection, of feeling unwanted, of believing you weren't enough. She took another step closer. I understand that pain. I felt it too when Thorn pushed me away. It nearly destroyed me. The creature snarled, but didn't attack. You know nothing about my pain. I know you were 18 when Thorn rejected you. Just a girl who wanted to be loved. Elara's voice was gentle now, filled with compassion instead of judgment. I know you spent years studying dark magic, making terrible choices, all because you couldn't let go of that hurt. And I know that every person you killed, every curse you cast, it just made you emptier inside. Stop. The monster's voice cracked. Stop talking. You don't have to keep doing this. Elara stood directly in front of the creature now, so close its shadow fur almost touched her glowing skin. The curse is broken. The talisman is destroyed. You've lost everything you worked for. But Seraphina, you don't have to lose yourself too. Red eyes stared down at her, and for a moment, Elara saw the woman beneath the monster. Young, broken, terrified of being alone. I killed people, Seraphina's voice whispered from the creature's mouth. I murdered your parents. Lyanna. Cassandra. I can't come back from that. Maybe not all the way back. Maybe you'll spend the rest of your life atoning. Elara raised her hand slowly, palm up, offering. But you can choose light over darkness. You can choose to stop hurting people and start healing yourself. The goddess offers redemption to anyone brave enough to accept it. Silver light pooled in her palm, not aggressive, not burning. Just warm. Welcoming. The pure essence of priestess magic. All you have to do is let go of the hate. Let go of the pain. Let the darkness burn away, and I promise, I swear on my priestess vows, I'll help you find your way back." The creature stared at the light. Elara felt its war with itself through the magic, the dark energy fighting to maintain control, and Seraphina's battered soul struggling to break free. "It hurts," the creature whispered. "Letting go hurts. I know. But holding on hurts more." Elara's eyes filled with tears. "Please, Seraphina. Choose life. Choose healing. Choose to be more than your worst mistakes." For an eternal moment, nothing happened. The chamber was silent except for the crackle of residual magic and the sound of breathing. Then the monster reached out one massive, clawed hand toward the light in Elara's palm. The moment they touched, silver fire exploded through the creature's body. It screamed, but this time not in rage or violence. In release. In relief. The dark magic fought back, trying to keep its host, but priestess light was more powerful than any curse. It burned through the corruption like the sun through fog, purifying, cleansing, redeeming. The creature's form began to shrink. The shadow fur dissolved. The claws retracted. The monstrous features softened back into something human. When the light faded, Seraphina knelt on the floor in her torn red dress, no longer glowing with power. Just a woman, exhausted, tear-streaked, and finally free. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. What have I done? What have I?" Elara knelt beside her, gathering the broken woman into her arms. "You made terrible choices. And you'll answer for them. But today, you chose differently. That matters." Thorn appeared at Elara's side, and she felt his amazement through the bond. "You did it. You actually redeemed her. We did it." Elara looked up at her mate, seeing him truly for the first time since breaking the binding, not through the haze of partial rejection or the urgency of battle, but clearly. Wholly. Together. And the mate bond, which had been a thin thread, suddenly roared to life. It wasn't like before, not the gentle warmth of their first connection. This was completion. Full, permanent, unbreakable. Every wall between them dissolved. Every barrier fell. Elara felt Thorn's soul twine with hers, felt their wolves recognize each other as true mates, felt the goddess's blessing settle over them like a benediction. Thorn gasped, his hand flying to his chest. "Elara. I feel it too." Wonder filled her voice. "The curse is really gone. We're really free." They came together in a kiss that tasted like triumph and tears and promises kept. The mate bonds sang between them, no longer threatened or incomplete. Just perfect. When they finally broke apart, Marcus was directing guards to take Seraphina into custody. She went quietly, not resisting, her ice-blue eyes empty of everything except exhausted relief. "What will happen to her?" Elara asked. "Trial. Judgment. She'll face consequences for what she's done." Thorn's voice was firm but not cruel. "But because you showed her mercy, I will too. She'll live. Just not in freedom." It was fair. It was justice. And it was more than Seraphina deserved, but exactly what a priestess would offer. The council convened 3 days later in an emergency session. The destroyed chambers had been evidence enough of the battle, but testimonies from Marcus, the guards, and even a surprisingly honest account from Seraphina herself painted the full picture. Lady Seraphina Whitmore was stripped of her title and lands, sentenced to life imprisonment in a specialized facility where dark magic users were held. She accepted the judgment without protest, her face pale but resigned. And then Lord Aldrich stood before the full court, the same man who'd pushed for Elara's rejection, and bowed deeply to her. "We were wrong," he said simply. "About the danger you posed. About what a priestess represents. You saved this kingdom from a threat we didn't even know existed. You showed mercy when violence would have been easier. And you've proven yourself worthy of standing beside our king." He gestured, and servants brought forth the Luna Queen's crown, a delicate circlet of silver and moonstone that hadn't been worn in 3 generations. Elara Winters, born of the Moon Priestess bloodline, chosen by the goddess herself, we ask that you accept your place as Luna Queen of this realm. Tears blurred Elara's vision as she knelt. Thorn placed the crown on her head himself, his hands steady and sure. When she rose, the entire court erupted in applause. She was no longer an Omega. No longer invisible or unwanted. She was Luna Queen, priestess of the moon, and mate to the Alpha King. She was exactly who she was always meant to be. Epilogue, 3 months later. The morning sickness was getting ridiculous. Elara clutched the bathroom sink, breathing through another wave of nausea, while Thorn rubbed circles on her back and tried not to laugh. "This isn't funny," she groaned. "It's a little funny." He kissed her temple. The most powerful priestess in centuries, brought low by pregnancy hormones. "I could still turn you into a toad. But you won't, because you love me." She did. Desperately. The mate bond between them had only grown stronger over the past 3 months, settling into something deep and unshakable. They'd faced curses, betrayals, and magical battles. Morning sickness was nothing. When the nausea passed, Thorn helped her back to their bed, in their chambers, where they belonged together. Through the window, she could see the palace gardens in full bloom, and beyond that, the city thriving under their rule. So much had changed. Moira had come out of her tower to become the official court witch, advising Elara on controlling her priestess powers. Marcus had been promoted to first beta, overseeing palace security with obsessive efficiency. Even Helen seemed genuinely pleased to serve a Luna Queen who treated staff with kindness instead of disdain. And the kingdom itself was transforming. Word had spread about the priestess queen, about her mercy and her power. Wolves who'd been hiding their own magical talents were coming forward, no longer afraid of persecution. Ancient texts were being recovered, old traditions restored. The purge's damage was finally being healed. "What are you thinking about?" Thorn settled beside her, pulling her against his chest. "Everything. How different my life is now." Elara traced the mate mark on his shoulder, a silver crescent moon that had appeared when their bond completed. "4 months ago, I was nobody. Just an Omega trying to make rent. I never imagined I'd be here." The goddess knew. Thorn's hand found her still flat stomach, resting there protectively. "She knew exactly what she was doing when she brought you into that ceremony. When she sat you next to me. I thought you were just some random grumpy alpha." "I was a grumpy alpha. Still am, sometimes." He grinned. "You just happened to find it charming." Elara laughed and kissed him, slow and sweet. The pregnancy had been a surprise. Priestess bloodlines were notoriously difficult to conceive, but apparently, the goddess had other plans. Plans that included an heir who would carry both Alpha King and Moon Priestess power. Their child would be extraordinary. But for now, they were just parents-to-be, terrified and excited in equal measure. A knock sounded at the door. "Your Majesties. The morning court session begins in an hour." "We'll be there," Thorn called back. Then to Elara, "Ready to rule a kingdom?" "With you?" "Always." They dressed together, Thorn in his formal blacks, Elara in flowing silver robes that marked her as both queen and priestess. She wore the Luna crown without self-consciousness now, and the silver marks on her skin, permanent reminders of her heritage, glowed softly in the morning light. Before they left their chambers, Thorn pulled her close one more time. "I love you. More than I thought possible. More than I can express. I love you too." Elara touched his face, feeling the bond pulse between them. "Thank you for not giving up on us. Even when it seemed impossible." "Never." His voice was fierce with conviction. "You're my fated mate, my Luna Queen, the mother of my child. I will love you until the stars burn out." They walked together through the palace halls, side by side as equals. Staff bowed as they passed, but there was respect in the gesture now, not fear or skepticism. The throne room was filled with nobles and petitioners, all rising as the king and queen entered. Elara took her place on the Luna throne, empty for so long, now finally occupied. As the morning session began, as she used her priestess insight to help Thorn make wise judgments, as she felt their child growing inside her and their bonds singing strong and true, Elara thought about that girl in a worn dress who'd accidentally sat beside the Alpha King. That girl had been invisible. Overlooked. Convinced she was nothing special. But she'd been wrong. She'd been carrying greatness inside her all along, not because of her bloodline or her magic, but because she'd refused to give up. Because she'd chosen love over fear, redemption over revenge, hope over despair. And now that girl was gone, transformed into something far better. A queen. A priestess. A woman who'd found her power and her purpose. Thorn's hand found hers between their thrones, squeezing gently. Through the bond, she felt his pride, his love, his absolute certainty that they would face whatever came next together. Elara squeezed back and smiled. She'd sat next to the Alpha King at a mating ceremony, not knowing who he was or what it would mean. But the goddess had known. Had orchestrated every moment, every trial, every triumph that led them here. And Elara wouldn't change a single second of it. I know you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Drop your thoughts in the comments section below and share this video to family and friends. The end.